Hello and welcome to my channel. I wanted to give a shout out to all the new people that are here, subscribing, taking a look at my content. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about motivational interviewing for tarot readers. Before we get to our topic, I wanted to catch us up on a couple of things. The first thing is to thank Kelly-Ann Maddox for giving me a wonderful shout out in her most recent video about different witchy channels that you can check out on YouTube. I am so touched to be included. I've been a little behind in my video watching. I live in the middle of nowhere and my internet is very slow, so video watching I'm a little behind right now. I noticed that my subscriber count had gone up and I was like, this has to be a mistake. There's been a glitch in the matrix. There's no way this is real. They've miscounted somehow. And then I went and looked at her channel and saw the video and realized that she had given me this lovely shout out. And so thank you to everyone who watched her video and decided to come and check me out. I'm so glad you're here. Kelly-Ann Maddox was actually the very first witchy YouTuber that I ever watched or subscribed to. I really loved what she had to say about tarot. I was actually a brand new tarot reader. I was looking for guidance. I watched her Intro to Tarot series, which is excellent, by the way, and I just came to really enjoy her content. She was one of the main people that inspired me to want to make this channel in the first place, to talk about tarot. I would identify her and Jesse Huntenberg, who you should also check out if you haven't already, as people that I saw their work and was like, oh, this is something that I could try, that I could do, to talk about tarot, to talk about psycho-spiritual issues, and to be open about who I am in a public forum. The biggest challenge for me has been finding my own voice, I would say, right? Because you can look at someone else and think, oh, I want to make content like so-and-so, but really, what content do you have to offer that's unique? That's the question to ask. At the end of the day, I've realized that I love having a creative outlet. I love getting to put my voice out there, to practice this whole thing. And, if one person watches, if two people watch, great. And if more people watch, even better. Because at the end of the day, I enjoy making this, and hopefully it has some benefit for you as well. For those that don't know, I am both a trained psychotherapist and a tarot reader. So I really like combining those two skill sets to help contribute things to the field of tarot that might not be filtering in otherwise. Overall, I think there's a lot of overlap between the tarot world and the psychology world, and even the psychotherapy world. I know numerous psychotherapists who are also tarot readers or who dabble in tarot. If you look at the work of Carl Jung, he's all about archetypes, and that is a big piece of what makes tarot work. So tarot and psychology has a history that goes back a long way. There are newer psychological tools that I don't see coming up as often in the conversation in the tarot world, and that is something that I'm interested in changing and bringing in these things that I think really could benefit tarot readers in their work. And just to be fair, if you're watching this video and you're not a tarot reader, that's okay. Like, these are tools that can benefit you no matter what you do in life, so feel free to keep watching. Like I said before, this video is going to be about motivational interviewing. If you work in the healthcare industry, you've probably heard this a lot, so bear with me as I go over some of the basics. But if this is new to you, I want to define our terms. Motivational interviewing is a therapeutic conversational style. It's not really a modality, it's a style of how you are with people, how you talk with people, that is about creating change. So I'm going to read for you here the definition from the textbook. Motivational interviewing is a directive, client-centered counseling style for eliciting behavior change by helping clients to explore and resolve ambivalence. The examination and resolution of ambivalence is its central purpose. Big stuff there. First of all, ambivalence is when we're of two minds, right? So there's something that we, have strong feelings that, about this person we're dating. We really, really care about them. We like them a lot. And there are some qualities about them that we also really don't like. And so we're in this mind of like, well, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, what should I do? We're torn. We're considering, breaking up with them, we're considering staying with them, and we don't know which direction to go. That's ambivalence. The first book about motivational interviewing was published in the early 90s by Miller and Rolnick. And it was originally created around substance abuse. And this is often where I would say it gets the most use today in the mental health field is, when people are working with those who struggle with addiction or struggle with substance misuse. This is a surefire way that we know that can help us to further the conversation, to move people along in the stages of change. Meaning, if they're not interested in making changes, hopefully we move them to a place where maybe they are interested in making changes. So you may be asking, if this is this kind of counseling thing, if it's meant for dealing with addiction, why should I, as a tarot reader, care about motivational interviewing? Well, I have a lot of reasons to offer you. Buckle up because this is going to be a long video. So let's talk for a minute about what tarot readers do. This alone could be its own video, right? Because there are so many different styles of tarot. But I think at its core, tarot is really about helping people be their best selves. Whether that's through more of a traditional divination mindset, whether that's more psycho-spiritual, right? We're looking to guide people to help them to make good choices, to move forward with their goals, right? To be happy, to be successful, to grow as people, right? These are all things we want to see our clients' lives improve. Often people come to us because they're not happy with how things are. Maybe they want to make changes. Maybe they don't even know what the changes that they should make or where to even start, right? We offer people guidance, we offer clarification, insight, validation, emotional support. So we play a role in helping people as they're navigating sometimes very challenging things coming up in their lives. People commonly ask questions about work, relationships, health, housing, all kinds of things, spirituality for sure. How many times have I heard someone say, I've got this repeat client, they keep asking me the same question, I keep giving them good advice, but it doesn't seem like anything's changing. This is why a tool like motivational interviewing is going to be way more useful because it helps you to set up the conversation in a different way that's going to actually address the root of the problem. Because if the person continues to ask the same question and you continue to give the same answer, nothing is likely to change. But if you can have a different conversation, you might get somewhere. So that client with that relationship problem that they keep asking and you keep, getting the Three of Swords and you're like, oh my God, just leave him already, right? That person has unresolved ambivalence. They are torn between two or more options and they need help resolving their ambivalence. You can give them your opinion. You can say, this is what I think you should do. But because it's not coming from them, it's not going to be that meaningful, right? They need to work through their ambivalence, not you, right? You feel very clear. So motivational interviewing is about helping people through that process of working through the ambivalence, which comes up a lot in tarot. So I want to put motivational interviewing on the map for tarot readers. You may ask, if this is a counseling style, is it okay for me to use it? And the answer is yes. Motivational interviewing is not something that can only be used by licensed therapists. It is already used by a number of different kinds of professionals, including doctors, dentists, dental hygienists, medical assistants, nurses. It is really meant for anyone that is helping people who are engaging in the change process. So as a tarot reader, you are absolutely allowed to embrace tools like motivational interviewing. I have another great quote here about MI, which is what we colloquially call it, was motivational interviewing is a bit of a mouthful. So it says, it draws out people's own hopes, experience, and wisdom about themselves, including whether or not to change. So that's really important, right? Because I think, and feel free to disagree with me below in the comments, that our job as tarot readers is not necessarily to give objective expert advice, but it is to facilitate a process where we can connect people to their own deep sense of knowing and intuition that comes from inside. If I can give someone practice and skills to do that, that is how I potentially work myself out of a job. Because ultimately, I don't want to set myself up as the expert. I don't want someone to feel like they can't make a life decision without my input. I want them to get better at accessing what's already there, their own internal wisdom, so that they can feel more confident in their everyday lives making their own decisions. As the creator of Motivational Interviewing says, you already have what you need, and together, let's find it. You may ask, well, how do I do this motivational interviewing? What's the technique? What do I say? What do I do? And it's important to say that the spirit of motivational interviewing is far more important than the techniques, meaning that motivational interviewing is really about how you approach things rather than the exact words you say. So the creators have written quite extensively about the spirit of motivational interviewing. So I'm going to share a little bit of their thoughts about this topic. They identify 4 key words as being the crux of the spirit of motivational interviewing. We've got partnership, acceptance, compassion, and evocation. So let's break those down. Partnership. Motivational interviewing is about collaboration. We are not putting ourselves in the expert role. We are saying, hey, you know yourself better than I do. I've got some skills, I've got some abilities. Let's work together to help you find what's already there inside for you. Of all of these 4 terms, to me, acceptance is the most important. As a helper, it's really easy to fall into the trap of looking at someone's situation and saying, I know what's best for you. I know what you need to do if you would just do blank. And that is just not that helpful. Right? I mean, have you ever had someone come to you and say, well, like, if you would just blah, 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 and you're like, fuck you, right? Because ultimately you need to have your process. You need to go at your own pace. So we as helpers need to respect that someone else needs to come to things on their own, and we are merely the guide. If we start to take over and we act like this is our decision and we get so invested that we can't let someone else have their own journey, we're not actually being helpful anymore. So we need to meet people where they're at and have a non-judgmental stance where we allow them space to be different from us, to have different viewpoints, to make perhaps different decisions than we would make in that circumstance. And ultimately, we need to let go of ownership because it's not ours, it's theirs. Compassion is a big one. To me, compassion is a lot about being able to hold space. It's about witnessing what someone else is going through, whether that's suffering or joy or anything else in between, and embracing it and supporting them, being there for them, and also setting boundaries and holding limits when that's appropriate. Evocation might sound kind of weird at first. So, right, when we evoke something, we're bringing forth an emotion, usually like a movie you watch, it's really sad, right? That movie is evoking sadness through words, through images, through sounds. And so in our conversations, right, we can evoke different experiences, different emotions, different mood states, and that's what we're looking to do, is that we're trying to call forth a sense of motivation, a sense of clarity, the resolution of that ambivalence. We're trying to kind of, not in a sneaky manipulative way, right? But I think of, the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, where they're like trying to inception the men into thinking something's their idea. We don't want to trick people. That's not what we're looking to do, but we are looking to allow the seeds to be planted in an organic way where someone is able to have their own experience where we're not necessarily in the driver's seat, right? We're a passenger, we're on a journey together, but we are holding the space where the seeds can be planted. Also, as a side note, I am referencing some articles here. I'm going to leave links below for those so that you can read them directly. Know that if you really resonate with motivational interviewing, there's a ton of books, videos, podcasts, courses, all kinds of resources right at your fingertips online if you want to learn more. In motivational interviewing, change is elicited from the client and not imposed from without. That's a direct quote from Miller and Rolnick. We cannot go in and say, here are my goals for you, as much as we may want to sometimes. We have to really sit down and say, okay, what are your goals? And how can I help you with that? because it is the client's task, not ours, to resolve the ambivalence. We merely support the process. That is all. You may have noticed that if you sit someone down and say, I don't like what you're doing, I think you should change, I think you should leave him, or I think you need to stop drinking, oftentimes it doesn't have the desired effect, right? Most people aren't like, wow, I was waiting for someone to tell me to stop doing those things, and now that you've said it, I'm gonna go ahead and make that change, right? Normally, it brings up a lot of defensiveness, and it may actually cause a rift in your relationship with that person, and they may not feel helped. So motivational interviewing is an alternative to direct persuasion because we know that it's not actually that effective. Someone's interest in changing or their readiness to change is really not a static thing, right? You may feel an impulse to change something one moment and then something happens and that's gone, or maybe it comes back in 5 minutes. Right? Motivational interviewing sees readiness to change as a dynamic, fluctuating thing that is also a byproduct of interpersonal interaction, right? So when we interact with someone, we can influence their readiness to change either for better or worse. It reminds me of one time when I was a kid and I was on a volunteer trip, and I was helping in the kitchen, and there was this big pan that had been, I think something was baked, and it was all crusty, and it had to soak, and so I had let it to soak, and I was gonna get to it, and I was feeling pretty neutral about it. One of my teammates came to me all of a sudden and was like, you haven't washed this pan, you need to go do that, blah, 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 right? Was very abrasive about this pan, apparently it was very important to them. And immediately when I had that interaction, I was like, I am not washing that pan. Like, I'm going to avoid it as long as I can. Screw you, screw the pan. Like, it brought a really, intense reaction from something that I had previously been very neutral about. And so that's a good example of how when we come in guns a-blazing, like, you need to change and you need to do this, right? Oftentimes that can actually serve to put the fire out of any motivation that another person has. This is why anytime we're talking with someone about resolving ambivalence, it's important to see it as a partnership. Because we need to empower that other person. We need to give them the space to make their own decisions and to feel safe that they're not going to be judged or scolded or yelled at because they're confused or unsure of what to do. The spirit of motivational interviewing is essential because it's not really just a set of techniques. It's an interpersonal style that anyone can use in any setting, right? This isn't just for therapists. It's also important to say that if you start using it from a place of being manipulative, from trying to trick people, you lose the spirit and it's no longer motivational interviewing, right? It has to come from a place of being genuine and authentic and of really wanting to support people from a non-judgmental stance. To illustrate why the words themselves are less important, I'm going to say some sentences, the same sentences, but in 2 different ways, so you can see what motivational interviewing can look like. You don't think your drinking is a problem? You don't think your drinking is a problem. You don't feel ready to quit smoking. You don't feel ready to quit smoking. Think about how you feel when you listen to each of those sentences when they're said in different ways. This is why motivational interviewing is a way of being with other people. In the example of the first sentence, you could think of it in a paraphrase if we added on a first clause saying, I'm angry that you don't think your drinking is a problem, versus the second sentence where that first clause might say, I hear you that you don't think your drinking is a problem. Before we dive into technique, I want to make a disclaimer that if you feel in over your head, if someone is bringing things to you in a tarot reading that are maybe related to mental health, domestic violence, addiction, and you don't feel qualified, please make sure to refer them to the appropriate resources. I have a video in my channel about how to know if you're in over your head as a tarot reader. I would suggest checking that out if you end up in a situation where you're feeling iffy. These techniques as a tarot reader can be used for less severe situations. And so I am hoping that this will be a resource for you to take a look at this as a possibility for your practice. Know that oftentimes when people are learning motivational interviewing, they will attend multi-day, sometimes multi-week or month trainings on this. So it's not something that you're probably going to learn overnight, but I hope that this gives you a taste and gets you interested so that you check out more resources. I'm going to offer a little sampler of techniques. So early motivational interviewing uses a lot of acronyms, and I think that as you learn more of the style, you don't necessarily have to rely so much on that, but it's helpful when you're beginning. This acronym is OARS, O-A-R-S. So it stands for Open Questions, Affirmations, Reflective Listening, and Summarizing. I've actually talked about some of these techniques, mainly reflective listening and summarizing, in my channel, so I'll spend less time on those here today. Open questions. Actually, I've talked about open questions too. I've been secretly giving you guys motivational interviewing from day one. Who am I kidding? Okay. Well, open questions, right? It's when you're using a question that it doesn't get answered by a yes or a no, right? So like, do you want to leave him? Yes or no? That's a closed question because it doesn't really allow for any exploration. But if you were to say to someone, tell me more about why you feel so invested in that relationship, that's going to elicit a much more interesting response. Other examples of open questions would be, what brings you here today? Tell me more. How would you like things to be different? Or what was that like for you? So we're inviting someone to reflect, to explore, to discuss. It's opening the door to more rather than trying to narrow the conversation. Affirmations is big because this goes back to being strengths-based, where we're looking at someone, we're meeting them where they're at, and we're identifying what it is that they're already doing right. We're not just going to be giving hollow praise, or patting them on the back for things that don't matter, right? We're really looking at what can I genuinely recognize you for? And that might be as simple as, wow, it was really hard for you to get out of bed today and you did it anyway. I'm so proud of you. Or even though things didn't work out, look at how much energy you invested. Look how hard you worked at that project. Or picking up on character traits like, wow, I've just noticed how much of an empathetic person you are. You showed a lot of courage by reaching out for help today. Affirmations feel genuine and are connected to something in reality. Reflective listening. This is huge, 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 huge. It's about bending back, what someone has said to you. You take in what it is that they're giving you, and then you reflect it back to them in a way that shows that A, you understand, and B, that you give a shit. Sometimes when you reflect something back to someone, you will realize that you didn't understand what they said at all. And that's super useful feedback, and it gives you a chance to try again and see if you can get it the next time. Reflection is also useful for when you don't agree with what someone's saying, but you want to show them that you've heard and understood it. I talk quite a lot about reflective listening in some other videos, I believe in my tarot techniques video. Sometimes our first impulse when we're listening to someone is to try to problem solve or give advice. Reflective listening helps us to check that impulse because we're not necessarily trying to move the conversation forward in terms of reaching a goal. We're merely trying to show someone that we're there in the moment with them. Reflective listening helps us to slow down, to take in what's happening, and to resist the urge to try to fix people. Summarizing. So this one time, as a therapist, I was with someone and I think it was an earlier session, and they were telling me, all about their life and all the things they'd been through, and I was listening and, paraphrasing, doing the reflective listening thing, and we kind of reached a stopping point in the story. And at that point, I did a brief summary. So I kind of reflected back a large amount of information, what it is that they had just shared, to them, to show like, hey, okay, so these are all the things that I've heard from you. And it's a pretty common technique for psychotherapists to do. When I did that, this person was so moved. He said to me, I've never had someone see me like that before. And my simple act of reflecting back by summarizing what it is that he had shared with me showed him that I was really paying attention, that I cared, and that I was grasping, I was understanding, I was resonating with his experience. And that was very meaningful to him. And I hope for him, wherever he is today, that he has had more experiences like that. And I'm really glad that I was able to provide that. So you never know what simple listening, reflecting, summarizing is going to do for someone. I think it's far more powerful than we realize. Okay, so now that I've given you the spirit of motivational interviewing, some basic techniques for motivational interviewing, how is it that we apply this to tarot? I've identified 3 main ways that I think are pretty accessible for you to try. So the first thing, probably the most important one, is how it is that you're formulating client questions and also spread positions. So for some people, these are both one and the same. So essentially, someone comes to you, right? They have a question, and you may be someone that does more freeform spreads, or you may be somebody that has the questions essentially built into the spread positions. Doesn't really matter. Both of those are valid approaches. And so, either way though, we want to make sure that we're asking a good question. So when we take the lens of motivational interviewing, right, we would look at, am I asking questions that invite exploration, especially exploration of ambivalence, right? So if this is a relationship spread, the question, does this person like me, really doesn't give us a lot to go on. But if we ask, what is it that holds me back from commitment? We're gonna, hit a gold mine there. So the more rich and complex your questions are, the more open they are, the more mileage you'll get out of them. Oftentimes, a person will come to us with a really simple question, but when we explore it with them, we realize that it's not so simple. They may have come in and said, should I quit my job, right? But what's going on there? Do they feel overworked at their job? Are they not appreciated? Do they feel like their job doesn't have enough meaning and purpose? Do they want a new career? Are they not being paid enough? Is it the hours? Do they feel like their coworkers are bullying them, right? There are so many possibilities. So it's rare that someone will come to me either as a therapist or a tarot reader and say, I have this one question. We're just like, bam, let's go with it, right? There's a period of exploration. Sometimes that's really where the magic happens, is in honing down the question. For this, obviously, open-ended questions are great. Reflective listening is also very useful. But that non-judgmental stance, right? Because exploration is an inherently vulnerable thing. So if we can show someone it's safe for you to explore with me, they're going to be a lot more likely to take us up on that. So you've got to show them, hey, I'm here to listen. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to support your process. And that's going to make them more likely to open up. The repeat client with the repeat question. So we've talked about this before, right? And I don't want to throw shade on this person, wherever you are out there, because as a tarot reader, right, it's your responsibility to try and offer them a process that will help get them out of this rut. Whether or not they follow through on that is their responsibility. So for this person, say they come to you, they want a reading on a relationship. They're like, should I stay? Should I go? Right. I think addressing number 1, which is asking a good question, is the first component of this. I think you can avoid a lot of that repeat stuff by asking the right questions in the first place, by really exploring what's going on, not just asking the first question that falls out of their mouth. So start there. If you ask some great questions and still this person keeps coming back, they keep struggling with the same thing over and over again, right? Honestly, the very first thing I would do is to say to them, hey, so you've come to me for a lot of readings. It feels like you're asking really similar questions and we're not seeming to get anywhere because you still have the same question. Let's talk about that, right? You've got to address the process. Why is it that they keep coming back? Do they feel confused by your answer? Do they not understand it? Are they seeking attention? Are they really lonely? Are they using you to get that sense of interpersonal interaction and fulfillment? Is it that they're just really ambivalent about this decision and that's really what they need to focus on? So you've got to explore more, but it's always okay to name the process. Because if we don't name this repetitive compulsion, right, we're just doomed to keep repeating it. Also, it is okay to say to someone, I don't think it's helpful for me to continue to read about this. Sorry, here's your money back. That is a valid option. Number 3, I've hammered on this already, but providing a non-judgmental stance, right? This doesn't mean you don't get to have an opinion or that you can't call them out on stuff, but create a space where they feel like they can share things that are vulnerable and that you're not going to try to take over and boss them around, that you can have a collaborative process with this person. A lot of being non-judgmental is in nonverbal cues, right? So like, you know when you're talking with someone, you see that little eye roll or the little raised eyebrow or the little and you're like, ugh, that bitch, right? Like, they're totally judging me. And so I think you've got to be able to watch yourself if you're giving off those little tells that maybe you're really trying to be non-judgmental, but on the inside you're like, ugh, like, I'm so judging you right now. People can pick up on that shit. Build a really good poker face, or you can work on practicing compassion. For me, the biggest thing that has helped me to build compassion is doing loving kindness meditation. It comes from the Buddhist tradition, but frankly, you don't have to be a Buddhist to do it. It's a process where you sit in stillness, you wish wellness for other people, you wish them to be safe, to be free from harm, to be happy, to be, wise, all of these different things. And the more that you wish that for others, the more it starts to really take root in your heart and become true. And it becomes easier to access that place of compassion, that place of loving kindness in those everyday interactions. There's a really wonderful book, and I'll put a link below. Sharon Salzberg is kind of the queen of metta, of loving kindness practice. And so I would check out her book, and I believe it's actually just called like Loving Kindness or Loving Kindness Practice, but I'll link it below. If you want to learn more, you can also just put in the term on YouTube and a shit ton of videos will come up. So never fear, YouTube has you covered. Before I let you go, there's a little exercise I want us to try. So I'm going to read some statements, and the title of this game is Things That Clients Would Say About Me. So I'm going to read the sentence, and I want you to think to yourself, is this something the people I work with would say about me? My clients would say that I believe they know what's best for themselves. My clients would say that I help them to recognize their own strengths. My clients would say that I'm interested in helping them solve their problems in their own way. My clients would say that I help them to look at both sides of a problem. My clients would say that I help them to feel empowered by my interactions with them. Let those phrases land and think about if that really feels genuine. And that is something we can all continue to aspire to work towards. None of us have it right 100% of the time, or even like 90% of the time. We're human, so it's a learning process. Give yourself that space and that compassion as well as your clients. My main takeaways from this video are that you can't change or fix anyone, right? All we can do is provide that space for exploration. Ultimately, we need to empower clients to take charge of their own lives and to resolve their ambivalence. I hope that you've enjoyed this little taste of motivational interviewing, and I hope that it gives you some ideas of what to work with in your tarot reading practices. And if you're not a tarot reader and you've made it through this video, thank you, first of all. And these are skills you can use in your everyday relationships as well. Thank you for watching, and please let me know what you think in the comments below. Hope you have a wonderful day, and see you next time.